A very good afternoon to everyone. So, all right, we are going to start our session for today. So, welcome to today's sharing session on scientific writing organized by Department of Pharmacology in collaboration with Young Scientists and Clinician Network, YSCN, and Publication Committee Secretariat of Research and Innovation, Faculty of Medicine, UKM. So we are honored to have two speakers today. So after each of the speaker sharing session, we will have a Q&A session. So if you have any question to the speaker, you can put in your question in the chat box or unmute yourself to ask your questions. So without further ado, we will start today's session first by introducing the first speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Adli. So he obtained his medical degree and Doctor of Pediatrics from UKM in 2006 and 2012 respectively. After that, he completed his Master of Science in Integrated Immunology and Doctor of Philosophy in Pediatrics Developmental Immunology at University of Oxford in 2016 and 2021 respectively. He currently holds multiple main positions, including first, consultant in general pediatrics and clinical immunology, and senior lecturer at the Department of Pediatrics, Faculty of Medicine, UKM. Second, director of UKM HPKK Research Center. Third, head of clinical immunology, HPKK UKM. And fourth, associate fellow of IR 4.0 Institute, UKM. So apart from his busy schedule, he also leads and co-leads numerous international, industrial, national, and university research projects and grants. So to date, he has published more than 35 journal articles with H-index of 8 in Scopus database. So with his extensive involvement in clinical and research work, I'm sure that all the audience here today are very excited to know what are the tips to ensure excellence in both clinical and research along the career path, particularly in scientific publication, which is the main focus of today's session. So for today, he will be offering the audience on strategies for clinicians to publish effectively amidst busy schedule. So with that introduction, so I pass the virtual floor to you, Dr. Adli, to start your session.
Thank you so much, Yan, for the what you call this, the introduction. Again, I'm very humbled to be here as initially when I was approached to do this, I thought that might not be, I might not be the best person in that kind of context. However, I guess most important is about sharing this knowledge. I just want to confirm which slides are you seeing on the Zoom right now? Is it the presenter slide or is it the full slide?
It's a full screen slides now, I
Okay,
see.
full screen now. Okay, fine, good. So, but I think the main thing that I want to do today, and I think the main idea of this session is sharing. And although that whatever I felt about myself not being possibly the most published clinicians, if you look at the numbers of publication as well as H-index, but a few things have changed over the last few years, and I felt that worth sharing in terms of some of the strategies that have helped me over the last few years, because especially I guess that's changed a lot over the last few years in terms of how it had affected me as a clinician, as well as academician and a researcher in the field. And the topic very nicely put in terms of strategies for clinicians to publish effectively amidst busy schedule. Although when I actually look at the list of the attendants, possibly most of you are maybe not really non-clinicians, but if you are not, try to relate some of the facts that that might apply to you. But I think it, clinicians here are more of a concept as we always refer them to have another layers of responsibility behind it. But when it comes to the time that we have, when it comes to the numbers of work that we do, we are possibly the same. Okay. I have a slide, but it's more of a guiding the session to have some sort of element to the top. Not sure why it's not moving this slide. I move that? Yeah. Okay. So why do clinicians publish, or why do we publish in a way? And I like to focus on clinician because there was a bit of another layers why clinician need to publish. And one of the things is that there's a gap between theory and clinical. And I think this might be true. You might say this is normal, that's the reason why we publish. But the reason why clinicians have to do that, or why, if you are not a clinician, why you possibly want to work together with clinician, is because there is a gap between the theory and clinical. Just a good example is that you think of SLE. And up until now, I think SLE are very clinical disease. Most of the cases where we diagnose are based on a few characteristics of clinical and sign and symptoms. And whatever what we come into the knowledge of science are very much more of understanding what the clinician had defined as SLE, and any informations that you want to gather about SLE in terms of the disease will very much depend on the sharing sessions or in the knowledge that had been provided by the clinicians. You are very much dependent on the profile of patients based on the clinician input in this particular disease. I think that's one direction where the clinical kind of guiding what we possibly need to know theoretically. But on the same side, there might be a gap where we don't really understand the manifestation of the clinical symptom, although that we know very well what would be the theoretical behind it. And one of the examples will be measles. One of the hugely described, we know what the cause of it from the diagnostic part. This is measles because we know the organism that we found, or from the serological testing, this is measles. But the reason why they actually have an enanthem at day 3 and disappears and only being observed by a clinicians if they able to see the constellation of disease early before the diagnosis being made are still perplexing. Like, why such a unique manifestation in the mouth that disappears at day 3? So there is still a gap between theoretical and clinical, and that's leads for people to understand further. I mean, like, this can be for scientists to look for it, what were the reason behind it, but more importantly, sometimes for clinicians to reflect some of this bridging information that not be able to explain by science. For example, in the case of rubella, why do the patient theoretically have, or not theoretically, but clinically have an nicely occipital lymph nodes? And of course, we know, because the rubella virus are more inclined towards that so-called but nonetheless, why is such a very focus on occipital preauricular rather than any other lymph nodes are something that of interest to many people, okay, especially scientists. And of course, another reason is sharing experiences and observation. And why is different between the gap between theory and clinical? Experiences are very much into how I do things and how I observe few things. Means that how do I manage a patient's with UTI in the context where in the government setup where I possibly don't have some of the treatments and or possibly in a limited resource setting. These are sharing experiences where although we have a gold standard, although we have a consensus of what needs to be done, but sometimes either new novel treatment or even ways that clinicians do in the manner, in the context where they're not able to get the best treatment for the care. Okay, that might be the second reason why we actually why we want clinician want to publish. The third thing is credential. And I put here two elements. One is status, in terms of that you need to publish. Clinician need to publish to basically be recognized in the field that they want to be in. Means that if I want to be recognized an expert in immunization, especially when it comes to, for example, rotavirus vaccination, I possibly want to have some sort of an article relating to this. Although, when I first started, I am in the field of between the pharmaceutical companies and between the clinicians. I've been called multiple times for me to give a talk or for me to basically do that and educate people on that topic and with the credentials that I have on the academic side. But having a publication or some sort of editorial or any kind of publication published in the topic that I'm going to be giving, give me some sort of an additional credentials to put me in the context of professionalism as well in terms of academic as well as research. I put also a KPI because when it comes to especially people in academic, and that might be true as well in the field of clinical medicine where you are not related to academic, having a publication part of your career pathway. Although that it might not be required before, it is now a common requirement at a certain stage of your career pathway, although you're a clinician that might not be a lecturer, for you to have some sort of publication for you to move further up in terms of your career development. Requirement, and I put this into two different contexts, sponsors and administrative. Sponsors, if you are basically getting a grant, either by pharma or either by the institutions, for example, your fundamental or any of your grant, FRGS and things like that, yes, you need to publish, and that's a requirement that you have to do, so you need to do that. Administrative is really the KPI when it comes to achieving your KPI of the year. Like you have to have that certain amount of marks for your SPPU, and that's part of requirements for clinician to publish. Of course, sometimes you do not fulfill the requirement, but there's always a push, and then you need to give a reason why you're not able to do so. And at the same time, communication is actually a clinician, some sort of a soul of a clinician, and we do this a lot. And I think if ever people say that my doctor did not really communicate with me, I think that will be a huge failure on the clinician side, because that's part of our job of delivering information. And one of the way that it can be done, in fact, was one of the classical way of this can be done in a professional manner was through publication. Of course, now we have different medium to do that. People do it in video, YouTube. In fact, people now even use TikTok to actually deliver, to communicate about certain diseases to different type of audience. But professionally and still in the context of communicating between other healthcare professionals and academicians, having a publications in a scientific publication are the way that we look at one of the way that we actually able to communicate information. That will be why do clinicians publish. But I guess the reason why you are attending this session and why we are here is to reason out why do I need to publish? Why do you want to publish? And I don't have to go further. I try to reflect on why I published previously. I would like to think before that the reason why I publish is really because of the requirement of the administrative to achieve KPI that I actually need to do, but that's not as true as it is when I try to do a positive reflection. And the reason why, because some of the publication that I did is not just because I want to achieve the administrative requirement. And main chunk of it that is inside me, hopefully in a very positive manner, are some of the, what we call this positive and intention to share experiences and observation. I think that's the main chunk where I am at the current time. And if you look at the publications that I have, and I think that are mainly some of the papers that are able to publish over the last few years. Really because it's about sharing what I have observed and sharing what I have done, and the experiences that we have are really the core and the care of things that I basically do right now. And I put requirement of sponsored administrative. Administrative, I think that's all the thing. Most of you are here. I think you're related to some institution and you are part of what we call under some sort of working environment that require you to publish. And I think that is undeniable. But if you are having grants and also you are basically engaged with pharma, some of the requirement is for you to make sure that you're able to deliver the output. And I think I always want to make sure that I do that. And I think that's one of the second reason. The reason why actually to see this is actually the same reason, the same some sort of a content, but I kind of like structure it into why I publish, and I actually make it in a way in the prioritizing of why I do that. But the reason behind it might be slightly different from what I explained before this. Credentialing and status. Okay, and this is where I want to relate further that it's not just about getting a status when it comes within the community that I want to be, But for some people, especially for you who are building our career, sorry, hello, yeah, am I unmute? Yeah, having a papers that are that tell that I am one of the person that work in the field will allow me to access more grants, and will allow me to be one of the pioneer in the field. And I think I'm going to show you some of the papers and how actually I achieved that and how it entails to some of the grants that I managed to basically get. And I think that's mainly the credential when it comes to status. And of course, I think it's obvious for getting a KPI when it comes to career development. And I guess when it comes to communication, I do this quite a lot before in the context of writing up in what we call this editorial paper in a popular magazine and things like that. But I think now I've shifted over doing it to because there is now I'm going to share some of the journal that allow you to basically do editorials, perspective papers, and I think this will allow you to basically make sure that you have a scientific application while doing things that and of course, gap between theory and clinical are something that I'm very interested about. And the reason why I actually put it last, not because I don't do it much and not the main reason, it's just that at the current time that I'm doing this is something that I yet to able to publish because this requires times. And this is one of the major problems when it comes to publication, when it comes to us, because some of the novel thing that we do require time for us to publish, but the requirement for us to publish do not accommodate for that. Okay, what can clinician publish? So these are a plethora of types of publication that you can do. Actually, I have two screens. That's why sometimes you actually see me looking at the other screen. One of the things that clinicians usually do, and I think this is kind of like an advantage for us, but also a disadvantage in the context of being what we call this diverse and try to be broaden in terms of our what we called uh, status among our colleagues is that we can publish cases or case reports. And there are different types of way that you can do that. I'm going to share a few ways that you can try to scale up your case reporting so to make it a bit more outstanding. You can do cohort. This cohort means that you collect a cohort of patients with similar features, and this actually have a better output, and it usually are very good papers because being in UKM, especially in UKMSC where you're a referral center, you tend to basically have a cohort of patients that are very unique, that are of interest to the field that you are in. So you need to know your field very well. And of course, clinical trials are things that we publish as part of clinician. On the other side, I think a lot of clinicians now start to do this, and I think that's a very positive thing, is to do translational kind of publication. And it shouldn't be far because of a lot of these FRGS or even our fundamental things are start to extend to translational because there are now a better collaboration between the preclinical or the basic science department with the clinical department. And there are also clinicians now that even do fundamental research, not even translational, but they start to basically go to the basic science now, try to understand further. And I think that's one of the thing that why do I took a break and actually did a DPhil, a PhD dedicated on that to allow me to explore these types of publication for me to able to do and able to come up with this kind of scientific output. Another thing that they can do is laboratory. And of course, this is slightly different with translational fundamental, where you actually can come up with a different diagnostic tests or some innovation, or how actually I've been doing for the last 1 year especially, is coming out with some ways on performing the same laboratory testing, but using a most cost-effective way, some innovation, or in fact as hijacking some of the tests, and then you can publish it to basically tell on how this could help other people to do and to perform diagnosis, what we call this using the ways or the modalities that you have. and clinician also at certain level of your career. But I think now, even if you're at the early stage, with a good group of people as well as strategies, you can even come out with papers talking about guideline, consensus. There are now a lot of journals that allow expert opinion and perspective, and I think that's a very positive thing, because some clinicians, they're not able to do research, but they are very outstanding in the field because of their experience and because of their perspective on that particular disease or particular case or particular topics. Sometimes when you actually meet with a clinician, they don't have enough, grant or things like that, or any active research, but the way they're able to talk about the topic are just outstanding. So these are now journals that allow this type of clinician to write. So they don't need evidence, very solid evidence on their work, but they could basically relate on their experience, collecting what information that they have gathered from people before. And it is not a review where you basically have to, collect everything. You can put personal element to it. So I consider that as a slightly different types of topic. In fact, the journal actually considered as a different type of topic or type of article. Yes, you can do review that can come up from your meta-analysis, systemic review, or narrative review. But again, narrative review are very much based on evidence that they have. You cannot really put what's your opinion in. And then, of course, they can also do editorials. And editorials are very much related to the topics of the interest of the journals, are usually being invited. And they do now allow, usually editorials are given by expert in the field and they're being selected. But I see there some positive opinion. They do not just go for people who are the main or some sort of like the more senior or more experienced people. They now allow editorial to be even written by people who are actually doing some development on the works that being done. So you might be a junior paper, but you have done significant work on that field. You might be advised or might be approached to do an editorial. Usually editorials are being invited. I'm going to share you a few publications that I've done, and I'm going to tell you the story on how that happened and some of the learning points that I learned and some of the mistake that I do or I did and what I learned from it. So before this, as you can see on the left-hand side, left-hand side of the thing was the Ogetic article that was published somewhere in 2020. And to be honest, that is a clinical trial, and that is kind of like my baby that I have. That study was done long time ago, but it was published only in 2020. A few reasons why that happened so. And I think one, as I mentioned, clinical trials take a long time from coming up with the protocols, performing it. As you can see, very preterm babies, we actually took about 3 years for us to recruit all the patients. It took a year before that just to coming up with a protocol, ethics, making sure all the sites thing, and it involved TPN. So we need to engage with the pharmaceutical. And in fact, after we completed, it took a year, about 6 months, I think, for kind of perfecting the whole kind of thing, and then getting it relevant. But of course, eventually, we want it to get into good kind of journal. And you need to know that when we actually coming out this paper, we were at a time where there's not much support from the institution for us to publish. And we sent to numerous kind of what we call these journals, hoping that we might get subsidized or some of this kind of it. But it is very expensive. And if you think about at that particular time, putting about 25,000 to get into 25,000 of your own money to kind of publish are very tricky. And getting into some sort of like a more either free kind of journal to publish or some sort of very well subsidized, we need the context of your limit will usually result you to go into not a very high quartile journal. But this is a clinical trial. You don't really want to go to a journal that are just for you to publish. You want to go to a good journal. Unfortunately, with all that limitations, it took us a while. At the same time, eventually we end up that. But I'm trying to share to you is that particular time, one of the main challenges that we have was, one, if you do this kind of research, you know that it takes 5 years or even 4 years at least for you to basically come out with one publication. So it takes a longer time. And this was my kind of like one of my baby when I actually have it. So it took me that amount of time for me to publish. And of course, at that time, support for you when you start writing, support for you to kind of publish in this kind of journal, in the very expensive journal, take time. So it was a long journey. Eventually we publish it, but I think we need to start somewhere, um, and need to move on. I would like to reflect to the second paper that I actually put this, which is basically an original article. They consider that, and this is basically the cohort patient that I mentioned. And what the difference between these two things is that the cohort thing require us to do it on a very short time, and it take us literally for this paper to come out was less than a month. Not the reason because the data collection take us less than a month. It's not. It actually take us longer, but it was part of a larger cohort that we did. But when we do the sub-analysis, we find out that there was a very interesting finding of this cohort of patients. So you need to realize that certain papers take very longer time. And at the same time, when this second paper we being published, the one that I being shared, there were a lot of things that enable these papers to be published very fast. One of the reason is that we know a topic and there is a support from the institution for us to do so. This is an SSM group, so when we actually publish it, so there is widely supported by the faculty at this particular time, at this junction of time, for us to publish our data, and it was well supported. Okay, I'm going to share you again how you can actually publish case report and make it a bit more outstanding or a bit more higher ranking than just a case report. So a few techniques that you can do is to combine case report with systematic reviews. So this now, although that these are being considered case report in these two journals, but I could show you some other journals where they consider as an original article, or even as a systematic review, because what you have done is collectively gather all the cases of that particular manifestation worldwide. So you're basically describing a cohort of all patients, and this is now considered some sort of like systematic review kind of thing, and you collectively come up with novel or new finding, because when you manage to gather all the cases, you were able to document the different manifestations, uniqueness, or some sort of like incidence of this particular manifestation, risk factors, outcomes. You come up some sort of like a review journal on it. So these are the way that clinician able to perform, and those of this article are published in Q1 journal. So case report can be quite outstanding, and case report can also now be published in a high quota journal. But I think one of the main chunk why we are here is to look at what will be the challenges for us to publish. And I think this all this, if you basically see there is some sort of a graph or figures from here onwards, will be things that I actually captured or I actually shared from some of the publications or some of the things in the internet. So you can basically go and read and basically look at the, what you call this, the link that I provided. And I think these are some of the challenges why for clinician to publish. And I like to focus on the rate first. You know about time commitment. I'm not going to talk about time because I think that's going to be the major challenge for every clinician, even for me or even for anybody. Okay. But I'm going to focus on the socio-economic burden. And I mentioned to you before that one of my main challenges was because of the support. And I'm going to share with you, I'm going to be sharing that later, that I never really published a lot when I started as a lecturer. And I think that's one of the reason why I agreed to do this, because once I graduated, I did a lot of clinical trial study. In fact, if you look at the whole grant that I did, we look at the insertion of peripheral things, all in the babies, all in the pediatric populations. And when you start working, despite you start having the grant, you start performing things. And I do, and you make your work on the field of doing research, which I really like. But it takes time for you to publish. So I have no publication. But of course, people say that, but you have case reports that you want to publish, right? And I do that. I presented a lot of posters in all the conferences. I think I achieved my KPI because of that, but the publication was none. And the main reason why it happened, because of at that particular time, there was not much support from the institution to do so. And I remember that I was accepted for one case report, and I have to pay 1,500 US dollars for me to publish in a Scopus journal, not even WOS. And for me, at that particular time of my life, paying 1,500 US dollars for a Scopus journal for me to achieve a KPI that was being asked by the thing, although that I'm not really interested to publish that case report just because to achieve KPI are something against my principle. So rather than paying that amount just to achieve the KPI that was being set by the institution, I rather not publish. So the socio-economic burden are true because unfortunately, Malaysia now, if you look at it, are now considered as sort of developed nation. So we do not get subsidized for us to publish. And I think that's one of the main challenges, at least for me, because I do write posters. We do write, but we don't want to basically write just because we want to publish because we need to. And especially when we need to cover it out of pockets. So another, of course, when it comes to impact integrity is publication to pressures on authors. And I think that's true to most of you. And I think that was true to me as well, because after the first year of me joining as a lecturer, I was being called to a meeting or to a gathering in Bangi to basically tell why I do not publish. And I think there was a lot of other clinicians, a lot of other lecturers that attended there. And I think by the end of the session, I actually addressed to the vice chancellor as well to the TNCs why we did not publish. And I think a lot of people echoes the same sentiment, but all those that being addressed and then that be noted by those by an administrative is still a KPI that being put by the institution eventually. But nonetheless, I guess that was the main challenge, in my opinion, where the support might not be there. But there are a lot of good things that happened over the last few years since I come back from my study that I noted that things have changed relatively. So there are more support for you to publish. So use this opportunity for you to publish because there are many modalities and many ways and many supports that you have right now to enable you to do that. And of course, hyper-competitive research environment. That might be true for certain field, but I guess where we are right now, we are at a time where we are still very supportive. There is not much hyper-competitive institutional research requirement that will impact integrity. And I think that's very important for us as a clinician, as a researchers, as a writers to make sure that our integrity in delivering that message is well intact. I will not focus much in terms of English and language proficiency because I guess that's going to be one of our major issues, especially if you write into this journal. Despite that, we think that our English is not too bad. There are always a comments about proficiencies. Inadequate curricular training. I think one of these reasons why this kind of workshop is being done to allow this to happen, to make sure that you have enough training, some support for you to write. I think the next session are very interesting for you to help you to write better. I'm going to focus on pre-publication peer review deficiencies, and I'm going to be looking at these two publications to share with you on how these two publications have a different impact in terms of you writing up. Okay, let's see the first papers on the left-hand side. These papers was, as you can see, a lot of authors, and I'm both in these two papers, I was a co-author. And it involved a lot of people. And most of the time, I want to focus the first one first. It was really a good papers. It was a clinical demographic patients of a very rare disease, multi-centers perspective, 26 years of data. It took a long time for us to publish. It being downgraded multiple times before it eventually landed to this. Although they actually liked, but there were a lot of comments, there were a lot of perspectives, something being incomplete in terms of our genetic profile were not up to the standard. But you have to understand, Malaysia at that time, it's been over 26 years, there was not even genetic analysis. But eventually it landed in relatively a good journal, but it went through nearly 1.5 years of reviews and comments from all these reviewers. I want to focus now to the second papers. And the second papers took us about 2 months to publish. And we have very minimal kind of comment on this. And this is an opinion paper. And why is it really interesting? Because when we actually write this, I have to share that having a group of people that are prominent will allow you to basically get into publish it and to get it published easier. Again, I'm just one of the co-authors. All of us contribute equally to the papers. Sometimes people might say that I actually write a bit more, but knowing who are those people in the field really help for you to basically get it published. So one of the tips, one of the way that you can basically, I want to share with you is having a good mentor and having a good group. Although that it might be a very good paper, is very important as well. Because the journey that I have with these two different papers, one is really an original article, another one is just an opinion paper, are two different things. So I'm not saying that the opinion doesn't matter. It matters. In fact, it is a good paper, but having a good colleagues, having a good group are also important. So this is one of the tips that you might want to have. So now, what would be the strategies to write papers? And I think this is a very nice kind of way in terms of publication. Again, you can see the reference on the lower corner side in terms of strategies to write papers. And I like to take a look at what I have done, and I do it on myself. Do some sort of a SWOT analysis. What will be my things that I'm possibly good at, some of my strengths and some of weaknesses and some of the threats that I have when it comes to strategies that people have documented. And highlighted in purple will be some of the things that eventually over the last few years I identified will be some of my strengths. And you need to do this because you need to know, and you need, then knowing your strength will allow you to basically able to work with people that will complement your weaknesses and then allow other people to basically utilize your strength. One of the things that I am relatively quite good at is that I'm able to see a story on how the story should be crafted, some sort of an overview picture of it. And again, because of that, I'm able to see how the data able to be presented. So I'm able to do some sort of like an advice on how the data could be presented in a way that people want to look at it. And because of that, I think that allow me to know what are the interpretation of data that is required. And I guess on my side, having some sort of like way of knowing what are the type of statistic and some of the way that the data can be presented are also some of my strength. Oh, so in blue are things that I felt are my opportunities that I actually developed over the last few years. I start writing up. One is that I start foresee and overcome hurdles very calmly. Means that when I see comments by reviewers or when I see comments by any people who say that, oh, we're not able to do this because we don't have data and things like that, I'm able to navigate my team as well as my writing to accommodate for the hurdles that I have. For example, you don't have a data that you think is important. Like it's very hard for you to basically get this data because the way that interpretation, the way that the data require different techniques or a different modalities, a few questions that you need to ask. So some of the things that I am some of the approaches that I have is I could calmly, and I think that's very important for you to be calm, especially if you work in the team, to look at other alternative surrogates or other ways that the data can be presented or can be either even that the data is even important, and how can we do it when we don't have the data when we promise it. And that's led that I'm able to focus the team that I'm working with on the main goal and making sure that they don't lose track as well as what we call this, the momentum for them to move forward. And I think along the way, because of these two elements, I do not say that I actually have a very strong negotiation as well as leadership skills, but I do have some sort of skills to kind of like motivate the group to basically able to write and to provide solutions to the hurdles that they actually have. But I do have weakness. And I think my main weakness is that I'm not very good in terms of very technicals and formattings. Not really much of the grammar, but in terms really of like, you know, the referencings, coming up with the formatting of that will be my weaknesses. I able to write points, forms, I able to connect sentences, I can create stories, I can even look at the narrative very nice, but formatting it will be my weakness. And time managements are really my weakness. And I think knowing my weaknesses will allow me to know what will be my limitation is. Okay. So I'm going to relate to you on how this actually affect this group of publication, which, as you can see, are all based on one topic. And I think this kind of like a nice study on how I actually learn to basically write. And this is all people, as you can see, are the same group of people, and there is this SSM group people. And it all started by having a good team. And I have to thank these people that I work with because they complement each other. And I think in this case, for example, I do have another lecturer for this, Prof. Akmal, that actually really helped because she's very good in terms of managing and formatting and referencing, and her experience on that, where it complements at that stage when we actually start in terms of what we call this, educating and guiding our student at that particular time. And the first paper was a review papers. And if you take a look at the data that the student actually had presented, it was nothing near a publication. But it's being fair because they were students and we were guiding them and they was far. So guidance, and then try to let them see and making sure that we have a good communication, telling them what the data should be looking like, and how the write-up should look like, and how the whole thing will be the job of us as being part of the team to write together. And eventually, we realized that the data that we actually want are very good enough for us to even write a review that be one of the kind to actually collectively represent what is required. The intention actually to come up with a second paper, which is the main paper and actually the main proposal where we actually done. But as you can see along the way, we realized that this exercise or this study actually worth a few other publications. So again, this is about viewing what will be interesting to the community and what will be the thing that is lacking in terms of the particular disease. And this is some of the thing where the clinician can work together with the scientists in this context, the student as well as the other lecturers, to kind of like say that, okay, this is where the gap is, and I could basically think that it's of interest for us to highlight on this because as you can see, hepatobiliary manifestation is not being described before, but we start seeing this cohort of patients very interestingly. So we published that, and now it's some sort of become a standard. People start quoting that paper. And then the second paper was really talking about an association, because people don't really know what are the cause of Kawasaki disease. And we start seeing the pattern, and then there was some evidence to suggest rotavirus vaccinations, infection might be causing it. And we try to kind of like strengthen that one up because we actually see some sort of evidence, and there were very less people reporting on it. So this did not stop here, because the current time we actually have another 2 publications resulted from the same exercise that we have done on the Kawasaki disease. And again, this leads for us to actually have a few more grant related to this topic because of the credential that we have. So just kind of tell you very briefly on some improving flow in coordinator. I mentioned to you, we can basically increase efficiency by making sure what are the processes like. Based on the experience that we have, we come to the assessing group. I want them to basically review every single component that they need to collect in terms of data, and for them to do that, for them to review every single literature that talk about it and the different component where it relates to Kawasaki disease. And somehow that leads for that publication indirectly. So increase efficiency by telling them what the defined process and what are the things that need to be done. These are where the consistency are very much relates to my partners where it comes to the group, because eventually, as I mentioned, I'm not very good in project management. I'm very good in the bigger overview pictures, but in terms of detailing and making sure time management. So this is where I work with other people to basically making sure that the project is being managed appropriately. So consistency are not my biggest strength, but are very important in coordinating writing. Communications where I felt there are two parts of communication, and one of it I'm quite good at in terms of telling people or working with people in the way that I'm able to share what the opinion is, and motivate people and make people feel calm and comfortable with me and like to work together with me. But at the same time, communication also making sure you need a skill to make sure that people are on board and following the deadline that given and not to be sticking behind. And that part I'm not really good at. Although that, and because I do understand there are sometimes some limitation when it come into time as well as the work project that I have, the work project that we have. But having people who are able to communicate and share that and making sure that they do it is very good. So having a good team is very important, as well as, and that leads for me to improve my collaboration. Knowing that who are the parties that you are working well with, knowing their strength, and sometimes you work with a few people of a group, then you realize that they are good in certain ways of writing, and of course making sure that the way that you work also complement each other, and you share the same ideas as well as directions of your writing as well as your research. And I think increased focus of quality on quality, I think it all come out with experience. We always have to start somewhere, and I felt that the quality comes as we learn further, and I think it improved with what we call the way that how we learn to analyze and the reviews and comments from the reviewer as well as our colleagues that we are working with. So I'm going to share a few things on how these papers are being developed. First one are things that I'm going to share. The first thing, as I said, the impact of COVID-19 will be really on how I communicate what I want to my team, because it was something that not very direct. When I actually want to do this, we do have a few data, but people were not able to see what is the association because there was none being described before at that particular time. So having to talk about what the statistic gonna look like and to communicate that information to the team members are very important. So this is about communication and having clear cut and a shared vision on how the data look like. The second paper on the transition practice is really about coordinations of expertise. As you can see, this is a regional survey. So you want to have a good group that making sure that your momentum is actually going to be good. It's about shared momentum. And I think the reason why we actually able to achieve Southeast Asia region is making sure that we're able to have connections between that and a good group, and tell them nicely what is the intention, so that everybody will have a good opinions about what the study being done. The third thing are something that I just venture, and again, as I mentioned to you, that you can explore some of the collaboration, and this work will not be possible because this is something new when it comes to qualitative study, that I have basically have to get input from people on how this can be done, and I think that's what my experience is when it comes to exploring some of the new ways that how I can publish more or publish efficiently by working and learning together from other people, because I never done a qualitative study. So how to coordinate time to write and publish? I think these are a few ways again being written in this article. I'm going to focus on a few things because I guess the others are quite common thing like prioritize your writing time, set writing goal. I would like to focus a few things because I think these are things that really make me able to write more over the last few years. One is that identify your changing needs. And I think that's very important because as much as I might be interested in a certain topic, at the level that I am, I need to look what will be the interest of the current field now. Because if I basically focus on things that people are not interested on, it's not just wasting of time. It's not just wasting of time, but we also not going to get anywhere in terms of support as well as the journal in terms of they might not even be interested for you to publish. So you need to know what the needs is. And the way that I actually guide me is to know what will be the future is or what will be the in topic that they want. And it will be very good for you to make sure that you have the data or you basically start working on it before they actually request for it. And I think that's helped some of our team members or some of my topics members to basically make sure that we publish on time so that we manage to grab the opportunities that relates to it. Embrace flexibility. So sometimes I think one of the things that allow me to basically publish or basically to work or to able to get results is that there are challenges in terms of technicalities in the lab or some problem for us to get some sort of like approval, some problem for us to basically recruit patients or things like that. Try to be flexible, try to be calm, try to also be considerate at the same time, and also try to make sure that you explore other angle and do work out in terms of how you can achieve some of the components that you wanted to by embracing flexibility. Seek support and accountability. I think that is very important, especially when you're basically working with sponsors. So support, as mentioned before, getting people that work together, but accountability is another component. Sometimes we are not able to deliver things that we envision it to be. And I would say is that being coming up with the alternative solution and deliver it to your sponsors will be one of the way because people will understand that. Prioritizing, identify urgent important tasks. I do this a lot, and in fact, I push my team very well on that by telling them what will be my deadline and the reason why I want them to be urgently achieving that. Either because there is a need for that papers to be published so that we can basically secure some of the funding, or there is a need because there is now an interest on that topic. So sometimes we do move tasks up and we move it rather than although we have one topic that we actually want to say that we're going to be doing it, but we've been delaying it because of there is some urgent task that we need to do that will be more in thing at the current time. Break down larger projects. As you can see, some of the papers that I've done, I break down the larger projects so that it will be achievable with my team. And I always, in a way, re-evaluate my priorities. And how do I do that? Because I do have a list of things that I want or plan to do that when I actually look at it, that I did not even revisit it over the last 3 to 4 years. Not because I don't want to do it, because eventually there are things that are more pushing for me to work on because of the prioritization that is required. So these are the few papers to basically shows what I was trying to say here. Or embrace flexibilities. Because one of the things is that I never actually worked with methodological variation before. And I think that was very interesting for me to basically look at it. And now we are exploring things on how can we use modeling AI for us to basically look at. And I think that's a new revenue because I usually more of lab person, immunological person, but having another perspective from public as well as planetary science was very interesting. The second part that I actually want to show you is that some innovations that we did together with what we call this software engineers to come up with what we call life index. And I think these are now one of the focus for a lot of countries. So we're actually being a reference for us to basically to look at the quality of life. And I think developing a software, working together with agency as well as software development are actually one of the ways that you can broaden up your possible publications that come with it. Okay, so this is some few hacks that you're eventually able to publish. as I mentioned, need to start somewhere. Need to publish something somewhere. Although that I basically say this, I was not very good at it initially, but after I come back, I think that's where it started. Be part of a group. Find a kind mentor, and I say kind rather than good, and I think that's very important. Having a good mentor is nice for you to basically learn a lot of things. When it comes to publishing, kind mentor are very important. Yeah, I think most of you can relate it. Having a kind mentor are really important because you want to publish. Expand, identify a niche, because unfortunately, if you are going to be focusing on a niche that are very much already well established, a lot of things that you're going to be doing are mainly reputations or possibly just a Malaysian population or institution. It's very hard for you to publish because there always people be questioning why are you doing this and things like that. So find, expand, and identify a niche. Even the niche are something that you are not familiar with, but if it relates, always explore. Forming your team and invest. I think this is one of the things that I learned a lot because I know some of my limitation in terms of really on the formatting and referencing. I do have a lot of papers that are not being published yet. And the reason why, because I do not have a full referencing, I do not have a formatting. At the same time, that some of this element to make it as a publishable article is not complete. So forming your team and invest. And the word invest here is because you need to understand who are you working with and what will be the objective of being part of your team. Either they want to have more publications or either they want to have trainings, and we support that. I think identify your strength and weakness are very important. I did that, and I think now I know, and that's part of the reason why I always invest, always part of the team that I have. Establish credential in the topic, and I think this is very important, especially if you want to be eventually recognized and to basically get reference and to get more publication rights. Utilize your surrounding and support. I think UKM now, especially medical faculty, have a good support, but there are a lot of things. Support can come not just from monetary, not just from publication. You remember about the ganjaran penerbitan that you actually have to publish more. I invested more on things that I felt very important. What we call for me to have. Strategic planning and reflection. And I think I do this quite a lot now. Calling my team to basically have some sort of figure out what can we do and what will be it and how can we basically strategize better in terms of the data that we have and reflect on some of the data that we have or some of the publication that we have and try to see what can we do better or things additionally that we can publish. And of course, I guess I cannot super emphasize this is to support each other and to be kind. So I'm going to show this because this is where I started. One of my first publication will be this so-called a chapter in a book. Then it was just a scopus. It's not even a full paper, it was chapter. And I tell you one of the reasons why, because I do not have enough support in the monetary. It was a free publication and I'm not willing to basically put in money. And that was my publication to start with. I do have a second publication that was thankfully partly because one of my collaborators are being kind for me to basically consider I am worthy being part of the co-authors, and that was my dear friend Prof. Diana. That although that my involvement with that papers was very minimal in terms of it, but to be start somewhere at that time was a very good push. And eventually the same goes with another paper that I have in the Internal Medicine Journal because of the mentor, a kind mentor that actually allowed me to work together with him to publish. And I want to share this because it impacted me quite a lot. Because as you can see, from 2017, I have very minimal impact. And in fact, most of my H index only developed for the last 3 years. And why that happened is because of all the support and the strategies that I started to have over the last few years. And if you can really see, it was really from the last 3 years where the whole kind of publication, all the numbers of publication that I have, the last 40 publication was all being done over the last few years. And I think that will be the reason why I agree to share. I think I have the last few minutes, and these are a few keywords for me to share with you on some of the things for strategies to do, and this is very near to my heart. iPhone notes. This is where I usually have my iPhone notes. If I have some random notes or ideas that I find, I actually written down for it. So I do have a lot of these random notes. I do have a list of it. So when I don't know what I want to write, and I felt that someone come to me and say that, can you help me on certain topics? I basically look at my random notes that I have on my iPhone to come up with the ideas. Google Drive folders, these are very important for me to kind of manage. I'm not managing very well, but having a Google Drive folders really helped. I now have template of proposal and ideas that I usually share with my team so that we can work somewhere. Mentee training and support. And I say mentee here because I believe that they are the one that help me a lot when it comes to where my weaknesses is. And I try to basically work together with them and support them monetary in terms of training and support, putting them and providing them training time as well as money for them. Share idea with them, even my crude ideas, and listen to them, some of the idea that they actually have. I allow myself to make mistake, my team to make mistake, and allow incompetency. And I'm very much okay to do that when they're actually not able to perform very well, because I know I started somewhere before. I am one of the person that I'd like to explore things outside and beyond, as well as to go beyond the boundaries. So I do that a lot. So some of the few things that I've done now in terms of venturing into AI, venturing into data integrations and planetary health. And I felt that you need to be your own voice and try to be unique in terms of how you write. So do finding your voice. And I think it start to appear now with some of my later writing in terms of the way that I address topic. Be inspired. And I think the word be inspired here, not just by people, but when you see some of your colleague publishing and things like that, and don't be jealous, but rather more be inspired. I engage proofreader now because although that I think that I have done enough, is always imperfect. So invest a bit on the proofreader after you have done everything. And I usually do it after I write it and I send it over to the first reviewer. And after that, I actually go for the proofreader. Flowchart and figures, invest on some of the tools that possibly that will be sharing before. And I felt that having a flowchart and figures are really important and really nice to have in your papers. Empower and compliment. And I think this is really for your group, to empower them and to compliment them when they do very well. And I think that's where your group will grow further. And give them for them to grow, and even yourself to grow. And I think that's very important. Conducive environment. If you are basically stuck in an environment where it becomes toxic, run away from it. Attempt for you to publish and for you to do it, but be realistic. Sometimes you want to attempt to write in nature, but you know your paper is not good enough for that. But be realistic on that. Be adaptable and also be understanding. Means that as much as you, especially as a leader, where you are basically working at a team, adaptable to their need, but also understand what your students or what your mentee have limitation in, and be understandable on some of their challenges. By the end of the day, I think what's more important when you write, it is just a paper. And because for me, when I write this kind of paper, it involves a lot of people. It involves informations, and it can be very stressful. By the end of the day, if ever it become toxic, if ever it become very stressful to you, just remember that publication is just a paper. What matters is you and the reason why you are publishing. So again, I felt that you need to be having a good reason why you want to write, so that it will be a second nature to you and not because of the requirement for you to just publish. And I think that will be my last point, and I hope that that itself will help you to kind of like strategize on how you can basically write efficiently within your busy schedule that you have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Adli, for your sharing. I'm sure that everyone are very excited to know your strategies in terms of publication. So anyway, now we move on to the Q&A session. So there's one question for you currently in the chat box from Chilan. So she actually wanted to know, how can we develop the skills of effective data presentation?
Okay, so I'm gonna give you a few things on how I do it. One is that I mirror other people's to start with. Means that I look at how they actually present data and actually do that. And I look at papers where I like the data being presented. Okay. And from there, I critically comment on what I wish the data should look like and what I want from the data. Okay, because there are always things that not perfect about other people's data. So that will be a way that I actually look at it. But of course, there's always a perfection in terms of what you want, right? So I think that's one way. The second thing is that I am a very visual person. I like to see things that are nice, concise. When I look at it, I understand it. So as much as I want it concise and simplified, I have to be efficiently deliver the data. And the thing that we have now, I start exploring different what we call tableau, for example, which especially when it comes to the AI and geographication, are things that I do right now to explore. But of course, it requires a lot of skill for it. But a few tips: mirror, being critical on what other people data is and what you want. If you basically you be critical on your data, like what I want if I want to do that. Will my data really explain if I actually reading the paper from the other side? I think that would be the way that I actually do it.
Okay, thank you very much for the response. Another question also from Siti Norain. She actually have two questions. How can clinician find and utilize opportunities for funding that can support their research activities? This is the first one. So for the second, can you share any practical tips on how to stay motivated and consistent in your publishing efforts despite your demanding schedule as a clinician?
I'm gonna answer the first one first. So can find and utilize opportunity for funding that can support their research activities. I would say it's not easy. I'm not sure where you are at your stage when it comes to Siti Norain, but at the level that you are. But somehow our institution, our industry, our current things are still not equity, are not as what it's supposed to be. Okay, but there are some modalities. There are like GGPM being created, for young things. But equity are not there. Although they say equality is there, but equity is not there. Means that where you supposed to be more supportive of the young and those are the one who really require the kind of grant. Unfortunately, our environment do not entice that. For example, just as simple as that, there are certain grant only allow at for you to become associate professor or professor for you to apply. And that's limits the opportunity for the young clinician. But of course there are opportunities for young clinician when they say, oh, you need to be under 40 or things like that for you to apply. But the amount of grant unfortunately are not relatable to it. You want something novel come up from it, but the grant amount are very not limited. So how do I utilize this funding and things like that? Some of the way is that to be aware of these opportunities of this young or whatever things that is there. Unfortunately, that will be one. Unfortunately, although that as easy as said, but the opportunity unfortunately are not as easy as it gets because as far as I'm aware of, I have none of those. I'm very good more in terms of getting the fellowship amount rather than the grant because they always look at how much you have published and how much your experience in the field. So it's always like a chicken and egg situation. So one of the way that I have utilized over the last few years is to come up with simple papers on the topic. One, epidemiology. Two, write a review. Three, basically work together with a team that might relate to it, get your name in the field so that eventually when they look at your publication that relates to your funding grant, you're going to get it. Because people will not provide you and they don't know, say like, you want to look for a molecular genetic and they say you have none of those, they will not basically will support you on that. Unfortunately, that's the reality. So a few things I mentioned: review. One, do an epidemiological study. Three, get a link to a group that might help you to basically be part of the team, and then linkage you on that. Can you share any practical tips on how to motivate? I would say is that when I when I first start, and I mentioned to you, I was being called to a group of meeting to say why we don't publish. It demotivate me a lot. And then when I start to basically get publication, when they basically being accepted, and then suddenly I need to come up with on my own pocket, my own money. So it demotivates me as well, because I'm not going to be spending 8,000 ringgit for, you know, even a corpus index where I cannot even claim back at the end of the day. So some of the motivation that I have right now is that one of the few things from the institution, there is grant penerbitan for you to basically publish, one. Second is that there is a ganjaran penerbitan. So you basically can have that two things. But another thing is that I actually look at what it meant for me to publish in that topic and how it's going to contribute in the field that I am. For example, the way that I'm basically doing in the example rotavirus and rotavirus and RSV right now, as well as the Kawasaki and some of PID, that amount of publishing actually relates to more opportunities for you to be the expert in the field. That's one. Second, it's translated to more grants eventually. So more grants, and eventually it leads to more publication to it. Although that I have to say, when I first started, it doesn't, it take a longer time for you to get that. But I think that some of the motivation that might have might motivate us in a way. But I was demotivated for a while.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so currently there's two question in the chat, but anyway, maybe one from me. Actually, I see, because I believe that research creates publication, right? So I actually just interested to know that, because I see you actually collaborate with some of the preclinical lecturers as well. And I think nowadays is pushing forward to the collaborations between clinician and also the preclinical lecturers. So I actually wanted, maybe you can share some of your experience. What are the contributions that maybe from each side, maybe the preclinical sites and also the clinical sites, and how how it makes into a effective and also harmonious collaboration between the two sites.
Okay, I have to say that I have to thank a lot of my pre-clinician scientists, because they were very experienced in terms of writing. And I come back, I think they really kind of the one who exposed to me with all the opportunities. The grant penerbitan, how do you actually claim it? Because unfortunately, clinicians are not aware of this, unfortunately. And then they're also the one who knows some of the tricks and hacks that I actually shared before. So my experience on how it works is because they always a gap, as I mentioned to you, between clinical and preclinical. And it always about talking with them. It requires some sort of interest from both sides. Talking in depth and trying to see a common ground. So when you have a common ground, and then you can basically talk on the topic. It can be led by both. It can be led either way, because if it's more of a clinical papers, then the preclinical people will supplement in terms of their knowledge in terms of the topic. And then if it's a preclinical papers, it where your expertise in the field will complement some of the chapter within that. Okay. I would have to say the working ethics between preclinical and clinical are very different. I think you possibly have experience as well. And time management are one of the major issues that I have to be honest, will be one of my main challenges with you people. But I have to be honest, sometimes I manage to be good when it comes to my time management that they put in, but sometimes I have to be very honest that I have to apologize that I do not fulfill my criteria as a co-authors very well. But I think I learned from experience, as I mentioned, incompetencies, allow yourself to make mistake and do that, and you learn from it. And then I think I have to thank a lot of the preclinical collaborators that I work with, because they allow me to see where my strength is as well as my weaknesses, more of my weaknesses. And how do we actually work harmoniously is to understand each other. That's why I say understand and be kind, and then support each other at the same time. And most of the time, because you all from the preclinical are much better in writing. I think you all need to understand us better so that allow us to grow, because we do have some element for you to basically work with. Sometimes we're not able to see it. We're not able to see that there's an opportunity for us to write, because we might be not aware of the writing opportunities of it. So I think working harmoniously is allowing us to develop or grow. And I think that you can help us. I think that's where I learned a lot over the last few years, that I grew, contributed by their support as well. So yeah, I think that's where I'm gonna end it. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your sharing and also your response to the question and answer in a way that I think I believe that, because I actually as a preclinical researcher, I actually wanted to know about the clinician standpoint as well, and when it comes to collaborations and all these. And this will actually encourage more collaboration between the preclinical and also clinical researcher. So, well, once again, we thank you for your time and for
Yeah.
the sharing. Okay, so with that, we move forward to the second session for today, which by the second speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Chin Kok Yong. So associate professor, so a little bit introduction for him before we start the session. So associate professor Dr. Chin Kok Yong obtained his degree in biomedical science with honors and PhD in pharmacology from University Kebangsaan Malaysia, UKM. So he joined the Department of Pharmacology, Faculty of Medicine, UKM in 2015. His research interest revolves around the use of natural vitamin E mixture in treating osteoporosis and arthritis and the epidemiology of bone health. He has published more than 210 journal articles, 6 book chapters, and 2 books. His works have received more than 5,200 citations according to the Scopus database, with an H index of 37. So he has the privilege of receiving the Young Researcher Award from Asian Federations of Osteoporosis Society in the category of Basic Science in 2017, the Malaysian Society of Pharmacology and Physiology in 2018, and from the Faculty of Medicine UKM in 2022. He was recognized as the top world 2% scientist according to the list published by Stanford University or Elsevier. He served on the editorial board of BMC Public Health, Frontiers Endocrinology, Hindawi's Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine, and UKM Medicine and Health. He is also current publication coordinator of the Faculty of Medicine, UKM. So when he is not buried 6 feet under piles of manuscripts, he escaped the world by immersing himself in horror and science fiction movie and drama series. So as for today, he will be sharing on the topic toolbox for manuscript writing. So with the introduction for him, so with that, I would like to pass the virtual floor to you, Dr. Gab.
Thank you for the kind introductions, ladies and gentlemen. Just give me a moment. I have some problem with the slide. So again, the topic of discussion today, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can hear me clearly. I'll be sharing about toolkits for publication. So these are some of the, how do I say, latest gadget, latest software that I think will be very useful in helping us to craft out, came out with a publication quickly. Some ethics in using them. And I believe that this is a discussions whereby you may have experience, the audience may have experience using this tool as well. And you may be more innovative than me in using this tool. So you're welcome to share with us also in how do you use this tool in facilitating your writing and also publication process. So these are some of the tools that we are going to discuss. You might be familiar with some of the tools. And you're welcome to share with us at the end of the discussion today on your experience in using this tool as well. So the sharing today, mostly for me, is on how I use this tool to improve my writing and also manuscript. So firstly, we talk about the most, how do I say? I think most of you have experience using Grammarly. So Grammarly is a, how do I say? It's a language software that can be installed into your Chrome and it can be installed into your Microsoft Word as well as a plugin, and it helps you to check with the language quality of your manuscript. It is available in free or premium versions. The premium version now costs $12 per month, but for me, I think the free version is good enough. So the free version will provide you basic spell check and grammar check. But the premium version give you more, how do I say, more advanced options for checking your grammar, and also enhance the vocabulary of your manuscript, and also it provides plagiarism checker. However, I do not recommend to use the plagiarism checker for Grammarly because we do not know the depth of the database. So I still prefer to use Study-in for plagiarism check. So the advantage of Grammarly is that it's more sensitive than the proofreading function in Word. It will pick up more language error compared to proofread function in Word. However, as with any very basic language proofreading software, that Grammarly have no knowledge on the context somehow. That if let's say you are using idiom or you are using certain very specific contexts that require a specific kind of language, sometimes Grammarly will mark you wrong because it has no knowledge on the context of the language in that sense. So if we are using Grammarly for free, remember to download the Word plugin, okay? And remember that all the changes as suggested in Grammarly are just suggestions, okay? They are not 100% correct. You have to review each of the changes suggested and decide to either accept it or to reject it, okay? If the changes are not appropriate in your context, you do not have to adopt the changes. So if you have no experience with Grammarly software, then this is example. You can see that I put forward a paragraph here, and you see.
Sorry, Dr. Gab, we cannot see your slides. So are you sharing something?
Oh, I'm sharing actually. You can't see my slide
No,
from the
we
start, is
haven't
it?
see slide. I thought just now you say that you're having a problem in the slides.
Oh, okay.
So I thought you are waiting for it to loading or something.
Oh, okay. Once again, are you sharing now? Am I sharing now?
Yes, yes, yes. We can see the slides now.
Okay. So I think I was restart the presentation, right? So these are the tools that I'm going to introduce to you. Okay, so we have introduced to you the basic functions of Grammarly, and now I'm actually showing to you the interface of Grammarly, whereby you can see the slide, the paragraph being highlighted. Okay, so Grammarly, we're going to highlight the areas that it recognize some changes will be needed. Okay, similar to the proofreading function in words. So once you move your cursor to the highlighted part, then a suggestion will appear, and it's up to you to decide whether you want to adopt the changes or not. So if I were to show you in my words, so this is how I hope you are looking at my word right now. You are looking at my word right now, right? So you are seeing Grammarly at work. You can see that there is a new tab for Grammarly on your Word after you install plugin. So you can choose open or close Grammarly. And then, as I said just now, most of the changes needed will be highlighted. Okay, and the suggestion will be given at the right panel. Once you click it, you will see that what are the suggestions put forward by Grammarly, and you can decide to change or not by clicking on the suggestions, or else you can just remove the suggestion. Okay, remember all the changes suggested are just recommendations. Sometimes they may not fit into your context, and then you have to think about it. You have to decide whether to adopt the changes or not. Let's go back to the slides. So Grammarly a very straightforward tool, I would say. And no one is required. So why not just download it to improve your language? And somehow during the proofreading process, you can learn how to write properly as well. What are the language standards? The second tool that I find very useful in my writing process would be Quillbot. Okay, Quillbot is a very great tool for paraphrasing. The website itself is actually, it has a website, offer other functions such as plagiarism checker, grammar checker, and things like that. It's up to you to decide if you want to use it or not. But the most powerful functions I find for Quillbot would be the paraphrasing functions. And during the process of paraphrasing as well, Quillbot will be able to eliminate all the language error that appear in your sentences. So usually for Quillbot as well, I find the free versions capable of doing the job. So you might not have to subscribe to the premium versions. So the free version provides you standard mode for paraphrasing, and the premium version provides you more mode of writing. For example, you can specify that the sentences you intend to paraphrase are intended for academic purposes, casual purposes, or just you can just go with standard purposes. Standard purposes is available for the free versions. You don't have to buy premium. The advantage of Quillbot is that it's very simple to use. You can adjust the degree of similarity that you want, meaning that you can adjust how much different your end product is from the original sentences. Okay, but remember, as you go further, as you ask for more, how do I say, more different? Sorry, yeah, much more different, then the meaning of a sentence could vary a bit. Okay, so there's disadvantages that yeah, as I said just now, extensive paraphrasing could cause the sentence to lose meaning. So again, the outcome, the paraphrase sentence is a suggestion, and it's up to the author to decide, or the user to decide whether you want to adopt the changes or not. You have to carefully appraise the output to make sure that the original meaning of the sentence is retained, and it is particularly useful if you bought. I usually use it after I've submitted my manuscript for turning in. As we're going to talk about turning in later, but just to let you know that usually after submitting our manuscript turning in, a report will be generated, and the report will highlight all the sentences that contain very high similarity with previous publications. And these are the sentences you need to restructure or rephrase to lower the similarity index. Okay, so usually we'll copy and paste these sentences into Quillbot and ask for paraphrasing. So this would be the interface for Quillbot. Okay, so basically you just need to copy paste your sentence that need to be changed into the left panel, and then click rephrase, and you'll be changed into another sentence with a different structure or paraphrase. And these are the mode that you can choose. Some of the mode are reserved for premium user. And look at the synonym bar, which you can adjust. Okay, you can adjust synonym bar to make the output how much different you want output compared to the original sentence. You can adjust using the synonym bar. As you can see, there are other functions in Quillbot as well, as such a grammar checker, flow checker, plagiarisms, and error detector, and things like that. But usually I will just go for the Quillbot. Even for the plagiarism checker, I do not use it because we don't know the depth of the database. So the result of the checking might be different from the journal software. So I will just use Quillbot for paraphraser. And again, in this instances, you can see that the sentence is changed into different sentence, not a different sentence, but a sentence, different sentence with similar meaning. However, would I use this to paraphrase sentence in my manuscript? I have to think about it because, as I said, as you know, sometimes in journal article we will avoid first person pronoun. So in the output, it keep using the phrase our immune system, our body, and things like that. Probably I will not take exactly as it is from the output. I'll change the output a bit before reinserting it into my manuscript. Okay, so again, this gives an idea that even with paraphraser, you cannot just take the output as it is without thinking, without giving it a second thought. Okay, these are just suggestions. Give a very good idea how to restructure your sentence, how to paraphrase a sentence to avoid detection pattern in. However, these suggestions need to be taken with a second thought. You have to think about whether it suits your purpose or not, and whether it suits to your scenario or not. Okay. The third tool that I find particularly useful is a website called Consensus. Okay. Consensus is like a search engine, but the way you use search engine is very particular. In the search bar, you have to type a question in Consensus, which allow user to ask a scientific question and get a list of references with synopsis. Okay, so if you ask a question in Consensus, you'll be getting a scientific answer in the form of a list of references. Okay, so all the answer provided will be from scientific literatures. Okay, unlike ChatGPT or Gemini AI, whereby when you ask questions, a summary is provided to you without references. So the question you can input into Consensus, it could be open or closed-ended. And also, Consensus has a synthesis of Copilot functions. They will produce a short summary based on the limited amount of references that it produces. So for free version, free user, synthesis, the Copilot function will analyze a fairly small amount of the references produced and give you a yes and no answer on your questions if you're asking a close-ended questions. For example, if you're asking whether vitamin D can prevent osteoporosis, based on the list of references generated, Consensus will answer yes or no for you, or it can analyze for you how many percent of the references say yes, how many percent of references say no, and how many of the references say undecided. However, this function is very limited in the free versions, and there's only how many times you can do this synthesis and Copilot functions in Consensus. I think the free version you can do this 20 times in a day or something like that. But for premium user, you can do this without any limit. Okay. However, I know that it sounds very a very good approach to do a systematic review using just based on Consensus. However, we do not know the depth of the literature search by Consensus. We don't know how much how wide is the AAV and search result covered by Consensus app. So it is still not a very good idea to use Consensus to replace any formal literature systematic research approach that you are using in systematic review, meta-analysis, or scoping review. Okay, do not use Consensus to replace your approach, systematic research approach in SLR, basically. Okay, but it is a very good app for you to use to get a good initial idea on the research field that you are initially approaching. So for example, this is a Consensus AI website. Okay, so there are a few websites called Consensus. If you are confused, just type Consensus AI. You'll be able to input the questions in the search bar. So in this case, ask can vitamin E prevent osteoporosis? And you give me a list of references, okay, with a short summary, a one-sentence summary, okay, from that references that will answer to my questions. Okay, you can see that this is a synthesize and Copilot function. Currently, it is being turned off. If you click into individual references, you are going to see the full abstract. And also, sometimes they will also provide you with a synopsis, even shorter than full abstract, to give you an idea what this paper is about. You can also create citation from here, and doesn't allow direct input into end. I don't think it allow direct import into EndNote, But then if you just want to copy paste the references, then you are able to do so here also. So this is when synthesize and also copilot functions are being turned on. And you can see consensus will analyze the few papers, the first few papers from the search and tell you an answer, whether vitamin E can prevent osteoporosis or not. Okay, and also it has a consensus meter to analyze some of the paper, just some of the papers from the search, whether it support the questions. Yes, it can prevent osteoporosis. Maybe it can, 27%, and 9% of the references or papers say give you a straight answer no. Okay. So again, it is a very interesting avenue to do a systematic review to answer a research question. However, we currently do not recommend it. It's just a very good tool to give you an initial idea on how the research will look like. But if you were to do a systematic review, scoping review analysis, you still have to do your proper literature search, not entirely based on consensus. Okay. Perhaps in the future, when this app have this hardware software website have evolved, maybe it can replace our human approach in doing systematic review. But for now, cannot. Okay, especially for free user, because the number of paper analyzed is very limited. So this is the copilot function. It basically summarizes the entire summarize the answer to your questions and put how do I say references at the back of each key statement. Again, very interesting avenue. Seems like it can generate a review paper by itself, but this is not enough. If for comprehensive review paper, this is not enough. Give you an idea. So for serious review writer, you still have to do further work on this. So, but this gives you a skeleton of how what are the key points that your review paper can talk about. Okay. And then next we'll be talking about software or website that most of us are very familiar with, which is Turnitin. So I think most people misunderstood the function of Turnitin. We call it a plagiarism checker, but then actually whether a paper is commit plagiarism or not is decided by humans, not by Turnitin. So the real function of Turnitin is to detect a textual similarity between a submitted manuscript with a collection of sources online and from repository. Okay. So when the similarity index exceeds a certain percentage, then the editor or supervisors will be alerted and use their own judgment to decide whether plagiarism, plagiarism occurs here. And the count value for similarity index is very different between institutions. And you must, I'm sure that you're aware that the cutoff for UKM is around 30% for student work and thesis. That exceeding 30%, you'll be asked to rephrase your manuscript or thesis. But for the other journal platform, they are using a much lower percentage. I have friends in Indonesia, and their university are practicing 20%. And with many of our submission to journal, nowadays, when it is exceeding 25% or so, the manuscript are being returned to us, and we are being asked to paraphrase our manuscript. Early in the year, there was AI detection functions in Turnitin. So it's a new function Turnitin whereby Turnitin can detect any AI generated text in your manuscript. However, in recent months, I realized that this function has been taken off. I'm not sure whether this function has been taken off or it has been turned off by UKM administrator. So I'm not sure whether this function still exists or not, because you can no longer access it through our UKM Turnitin subscriptions. So if you see any AI detection functions, the recommendation by turning in is that the count should be around 30%. Exceeding 30%, meaning that there are extensive AI texts incorporated into this manuscript. Less than 30%, then turn in say that it's not sure. However, I've tried these functions and I realized that if I use the AI or large language model to help with proofreading or improving the language of my manuscript, all these AI assisted paraphrasing will be highlighted. I'm referring to paraphrasing using ChatGPT, not Qbot. All ChatGPT existed paraphrasing will be highlighted by turning in. So there is a tendency for you to get 100% if your entire manuscript is being paraphrased by ChatGPT. So you do not have to worry about turning in subscriptions unless you're interested in individual level of subscriptions, because you can do subscribe to turning in. However, not everyone have access to it. For example, students are not allowed to have a turning account. Subscribe UKM. It's reserved for lecturers and also certain administrator. You can ask whether your departments, any of department member, the administrator or the lecturer have a turning account. For example, in Pharmacology department, I have an account. In SBI, I think one sitting or I have an account. So if you need turning in help to check your manuscript before sending it off, you can ask the person who hold the account for department, or of course you can ask SBI help as well to submit the turn in or checking. Checking, the result will not be returned to us instantaneously. Sometimes it take a few hours, and when it's very busy, sometimes it can take 1 day. And recently, there's some changes with UCAN subscriptions, whereby I cannot submit multiple manuscripts at one go anymore. I can only submit one at a time. Probably just this is some way for the UCAN to save the budget spent on turn in. So, and once I submit a manuscript in current situation, once I submit a new manuscript, the previous submission will be deleted. So we highly recommend the use of turn in checking similarity index compared to other checker, because I think the company who produce turn in also produce similarity checker for journals. Okay, so they share the same company, so the turn-in result would match very closely with the plagiarism check result by the journal publisher. Okay, so this is example of the turn-in report. As you can see, it will score your manuscript and produce a similarity index. So this is my paper. I have 16% similarity with the existing literatures online, and 60% is quite okay. So it's not of major concern. All the similar phrases are being highlighted, and they are indicated sources as well. Okay, so like this one, label number 1, meaning that it's closely similar to reference number 1 here. This is similar to reference number 9 here, and so on. And apart from the overall percentage that we should be worried about, we also look at the single source similarity index as well, meaning that this 16% can be divided into, this is 16% accumulations of the smaller percentage of individual sources. We had to be worried about the usually the first few sources, whereby if there's a normally high percentage from one single sources, for example, although it's 16%, if from source number 1 is 10%, then it is of major concern to the publisher and also editor as well, because you might be copying a lot from a single source. Okay, so usually a single source of like 10% is of major concern. Okay. So this is the AI detection functions that I described to you previously. Give you a score. If it's 30% and beyond, then the supervisors or the editors have reason to believe that AI text has been used extensively in this text. However, if below 30%, then the turning in a claim that it has no confidence whether this text is from AI or not. Okay, so for students or any people who are submitting their work to journal article, we do beg you to check your manuscript first through turning in before submissions. Because sometimes you'll be wondering why, for example, your review paper keep being rejected by multiple journals. And that's rejections. It doesn't go through the peer review process. You'll be wondering why the text has been keep being rejected. Sometimes it's just because of a high similarity index that you need to lower down for it to pass through the editorial desk. Okay, so get your manuscript checked first and get a rough idea. How is the similarity index? If it's too high, then you have to reduce it before submission to any of the journals to avoid desk rejections. And then we come to the tools that most of you are very interested in, which is ChatGPT, Gemini AI, or any of the large language model, LLM model. So usually I find them very useful in polishing the language of manuscript. Okay, so you can actually copy a paragraph from a manuscript and ask it to polish the paragraph for you. However, you have to be very careful on crafting the prompt to achieve the desired functions. For example, the prompt or the command that I usually input into ChatGPT or Gemini AI in improving the quality of language of my manuscript is as such. So usually we have to assign a role for the ChatGPT. So I'll ask him to act as academic editor or proofreader, proofread the following paragraph to ensure language accuracy, good scientific tone, and smooth transition between paragraphs. Okay, these are the criteria I need ChatGPT or Gemini AI to achieve for proofreading. Based on my previous experience in ChatGPT and Gemini AI, sometimes when they are sorting out the flow and the language and the sentences of your manuscript, it has a little bit of tendency to remove content from our paragraph to achieve that. So nowadays, I also add a prompt saying that do not remove any content from the paragraph to avoid them from deleting important points from my paragraph during the proofreading process. So for me, it's very important not to delete any point because all the points are crafted by me. Some addition command, if you want to learn more about their proofreading process, you can also add commands such as highlight the changes one by one. Okay, following that command that I have posted to you just now, you can also ask them to highlight the changes one by one, or you can ask them to list the changes made in the table. So you can learn from the proofreading process, okay, how this make the sentence smoother and things like that. However, we have to remember, we cannot, as author or scientific manuscript, we cannot generate content using large language model. So commands such as write me a paragraph for introduction of osteoporosis. This kind of command is not ethical to be implemented by the authors of scientific manuscript. You cannot ask ChatGPT or Gemini AI to write paragraph for you. It is not ethical. Manuscript writer should be responsible for the content of the manuscript. And this is a declaration that is required for all authors who have used LLM services in their manuscript. You have to declare the use of AI in the acknowledgement sections, even though you just use AI for polishing the language. To give an example, I'll give you the example later. So basically, this is how I use ChatGPT, and I think as of yesterday, ChatGPT 4.0 is released for public to use. Okay, you can now use ChatGPT 4.0 for free now. Previously, we can use up to ChatGPT 3.5. So you can say I enter the command act as an editor, proofread the paragraph based on what, and ensure the language is clear and concise. This is my prompt. And then you answer, and then you can start copy paste your paragraph into ChatGPT, and you'll come up with the edited paragraph. So if you want to learn more about the proofreading process, you can ask ChatGPT to highlight the changes made from the last paragraph, and you list the changes that has been made, okay, from the original sentences into the edited sentences. Okay, also you can ask it to present these changes in table as well. So regarding the use of large language model AI for major publisher, for most of the publisher, they actually allow the authors to use generative AI or AI-assisted technologies in the writing process before submissions. But these functions are only restricted to improve the language and readability of the work. And the use of generative AI should be disclosed in the manuscript, in the acknowledgement, as per the instructions of the publisher. So remember, ChatGPT is not qualified as author, so you cannot ask ChatGPT to write paragraph. You can ask it to proofread your manuscript, but you yourself as author, we as author are responsible for the content. So in one of our recent publications, okay, as entitled here, in the acknowledgement sections, actually in most of Elsevier journal, there will be a declaration section towards the end before the references. You have to declare, if you are using AI for proofreading, you have to declare whether, which tool have you been used. For example, in circumstances, we have used ChatGPT version 3.5 to polish the language of this manuscript. However, after using this tool, the authors review all the changes and edit the content as needed and take full responsibility for the content of the publications. So as author, we are fully responsible for the content, and ChatGPT are not, okay? And the use of ChatGPT is only for polishing the language. And this has to be clear. So in case the journal publisher have a tool to detect AI-assisted language, and it show a high similarity in their checker with this paragraph, then you can escape that, meaning that although there's extensive use of AI language, however, it is based just for polishing purposes. We do not create the content of this manuscript based on we don't ask the AI to create the content of this manuscript. So I'm sure that you have a lot of more questions about ChatGPT, but you can ask during the discussion session later. Okay. So sometimes you'll be after finishing the manuscript, you'll be wondering, where should I submit my manuscript? Only for beginners. Okay. So we're happy to let you know that many publishers and also websites as well provide free manuscript matching services. Okay, so I type journal finder in Microsoft Bing, and you can see this list of journal finder that appear in result. Okay, so you just need to enter the title and also the abstract of your manuscript into these journal finders, and you match the content. So you match the abstract with the abstract published by other journal article, and then you suggest a journal for you. Okay, so matching is based on title, abstract, and keyword. These are the basic things you need to enter into a journal finder. An author should not trust the result of matching blindly. You still need to, when you have identified some of the journal, potential journal where you can submit to, you still need to open the journal, look at the scope, look at the instruction for authors to identify whether that journal accept this kind of article or not. Okay, so do not trust the result of the journal finder blindly. You do need to how does it do some homework to know the journal better before submitting. Apart from the matching score, apart from essentially like how do I say speed dating between your manuscript and the journal. But however, apart from the matching score that you have been given, there are other factors you need to consider when identifying a suitable journal for your submissions. And this include article processing charges, the turnaround time from journal, and also indexing and reputation of the journal as well. Some of the journal that it might match up to 90% with your abstract. However, it may be only Scopus index. Okay, you have to find out more about the journal. Maybe it's just Scopus index, and then it charge a very high APC. Okay, then you cannot submit to that journal because you will not be applying that for your IPC if you just Scopus index. Maybe there's another 80% machine index with another journal. However, after you investigate the journal, you find that most of the publications in that journal take about 1 year to get published. It might be too long for you, okay? So these are the things you need to consider as well, apart from the matching score. So this is a journal finder. This is a result of a journal finder thing from websites. So to access the journal finder, to use the journal finding service in website is freer. You do not actually have to pay or to go through UKM to access to the journal finder functions or journal matcher functions. So the result produced by journal matcher by websites, the advantage is you can see whether the journal is indexed by SCIE or SSCI or not. Indexations by SCIE or SSCI indicate that the journal will have impact factor. Okay. However, of course, to access to the full journal scientific report, you need official account through UKM to look at the impact factor and also quartile of that journal. But this gives you an idea whether it will have an impact factor or not. Okay. So the matching score is how closely your abstract match with the publication in that journal. So this is 0.32. Of course, 1 is a perfect score. 0.32 is moderate. Okay. So for example, you look at here, this nutrients is indexed by SCIE, so it will have an impact factor. So for oxidative medicine and slow longevity, you look at it in the indexing, there's no mentioning of SCIE, so you will not have an impact factor, and so I will not consider this. Okay. For journal finder offered by Elsevier, it has a good advantage over the other journal finder, in the sense that the acceptance rate of journal, the speed to first decisions, and also the speed of publications are all available for you to check. Okay. And also whether you tell you this journal offer what kind of publications mode, whether it's fully open access or whether it's partially open access or fully subscriptions. Do take note that time to first decisions indicated here are how long the journal will tell you your manuscript is rejected at the editorial desk or it is proceeded to peer review. Okay, it is not the first decisions by the peer reviewer, but it's actually from the editorial office whether you'll go through peer review or you'll be rejected before going to peer review. Of course, you want this to be fast, okay? If you want your fate or your manuscript to be decided faster, then this is a very important point to consider because there are some journals who take up to 1 month, 2 months to give the first decision. And time to publication is also important. You don't want the journal to keep your paper forever in press and not getting the page number. Acceptance rate, of course, is also very important because if there's a higher acceptance rate, then is more chance for you to get published in that journal. The next item that I want to discuss with you, you'll be wondering why Microsoft PowerPoint. Everyone knows how to use PowerPoint. I don't need you to introduce me on how to use PowerPoint. This is, I think I need to introduce this because for many of the students who are writing their manuscript, I find it very awkward for students to use Word to arrange their figures. I do not recommend you to arrange your figures in Word. I prefer the students or people under my group to arrange their figures in PowerPoint because it's more intuitive, it's more convenient. Okay. After drawing the image of figures in PowerPoint, we need to export our figures in high definitions or high resolution figures. And many of the students do not know how to do this using Microsoft PowerPoint. Because many of the journal, they ask us to also provide the images as images of 300, at least 300 dpi, right? This is common requirement by journal. However, many of the students do not know how to do this, okay? So for many of the normal figure, very colorful figures, you need a resolution of at least 300. And for schematic diagram, usually just boxes and line, you need usually a higher definition for it to look good in the journal article. These are the original image you need to provide to journal to be incorporated into your final publications. And they need to look good or else it's going to look horrible in the published versions. And detailed procedure on how to export images made by PowerPoint in high resolutions, I will not demonstrate here, but the detail step is provided here, okay? So you can follow the steps exactly as indicated here, and then you'll be able to export high resolution image from your PowerPoint. And you just need to adjust your computer once, and afterwards, all the images exported or saved as image from your PowerPoint will have this type of resolutions. You do not do this every time. You just need to do it one time on your computer, and you can enjoy the benefit for the rest of the time you're using this computer. Okay? So if you find it very confusing following these written instructions, you can also look at YouTube video which show you how to adjust the setting. Okay, you go through this, or if you cannot go through it, you fail to do this, then you refer to the YouTube videos, any YouTube video on how to adjust the setting to export figure in high resolutions. If you are not, if you do, let's say you are bored with Microsoft, okay, this website Draw.io also offer a very intuitive and straightforward alternative to MS PowerPoint. However, the purpose of Draw.io is actually just for drawing schematic diagram. It's not good for drawing biological diagram with a lot of colorful or organic structure, but this is very good for drawing a schematic diagram, it can produce schematic diagram as such, like this one. Okay, in a very short time. So these are actually all the basic tools I hope you can master in facilitating your writing process. I'm sure that you have more. You might have more experience with other tools as well. You're very happy. We'll be very happy you are willing to share the usage of the other tools as well in facilitating the writing process. I will look at some of the questions here. So Chilan say, do we declare Grammarly as AI tool use upon submitting our publications? Usually, no, we treat Grammarly as a grammar checker. So we usually do not declare the use of Grammarly in the journal submission process. Just as we do not declare we have used the grammar checker in the MS Words. We usually do not disclose Grammarly as well. Sorry, most of you can't see the slide at the beginning. What is the difference between the open access versus subscriptions in the same journal? So there are many categories of journal based on their publication model. Some are purely subscription based, meaning that all the article in that journal is locked behind a paywall. As a reader, you need to pay to read those articles. This is fully subscriptions. However,
Korang stay dekat dalam Zoom tu lagi ke?
however, some of the European country or US country, their grant require them to publish open access model. So some journal do provide some subscription journal do provide open access options for the reader, for the authors. So the author just need to indicate to the journal saying that our funder requires to publish this article in open access mode. So they also need to pay a certain amount to the subscription journal, and they will allow them to publish in open access. So that journal become hybrid. It can publish subscriptions. Upon request, it can also publish open access. And they are entirely open access journal who publish everything open access, the reader for free, and the authors pay to publish. Okay, so there are just three modes of publications: fully subscriptions, hybrid, or open access. So hybrid is the one you mentioned, whereby some articles are published in subscriptions and some of the articles are published in open access. Of course, need to pay also. Okay. The next question by Chilan, do UKM subscribe turn in? If yes, how do we access? Yes, UKM subscribe turn in, and only certain assigned user have access to this software. Usually students do not have access to this software. You have access through a certain pegawai in your department, or you have to go through SPS or go through SPI. If you are going through SPS, that's to check your thesis. Okay, Engine Arcade will be responsible to submit your thesis to turn in. I think this is a required process by all the postgrad. But to check manuscript, you cannot ask SPS to check. You have to ask SPI to check if you want to use their service. I think this you have to contact Puan Nurul Siti Nurai for the access of turning in SPI. If you are in pharmacology, then you can ask me to check. If you are from other department, you have to ask around whether is there a account holder in your department to have you check. Okay. Yes, you can have the record a video or webinar today. We are recording. Okay. How can we use this tool while still maintaining the integrity of their work? Okay. So the use of all the tools I introduced to you just now are all ethical. Okay. The tools are ethical, but how you use it decide whether it's ethical or not. The use is the one that make a difference. This is why the declaration is very important. Okay, so let's say you are using ChatGPT to paraphrase, then it's very important for you to declare that you have used it to polish your language. No one is there to supervise you whether you are generating paragraph or not. This also go the same way with the way you're doing your experiment. No one is there to check whether you are fabricating data. Okay, so it is up to your conscience to decide how to use this tool ethically, especially LLM, large language model, and AI. Okay, so I'm teaching you the proper way. You should not use them to generate paragraph. However, you cannot use them to polish language. Having said that, sometimes we want to write review. For example, if I want to write review, I have no idea how to start. Okay, how to structure my review. Sometimes I do ask ChatGPT, can you tell me if I'm interested in this topic? I want to write a review. As academic writer, how will you structure this review? And actually, ChatGPT can suggest a structure for you. And you can write your own content based on the structure. Okay. I guarantee you, like, if you ask ChatGPT with a prompt like, give me a 3,000 word essay on the topic, ChatGPT will not write for you. ChatGPT will not accept comment as such. You can start example. Lee asks how to access subscribe journal. Okay, to access a subscribe journal, you can go through UCAM website. That is the formal way. You can go through UCAM library to access the subscribe journal. However, we do have the knowledge that our library does not subscribe to a lot of journals. To overcome the paywall barrier, this is where your personal connection come in. You can ask your friend, let's say who study in other university, private university, or foreign university, even better, to get a certain article for you. Maybe their library have more extensive subscriptions of journal article. Okay, that's one way. The other way is that you can go to ResearchGate and request the article from that author. Usually, most of the Westerner will give you the article. Okay. This is my experience lah. Okay. Sometimes I ask for Japanese and Korean, they don't give me. I don't know why. You can also personally, you have, because most of the journal article, they will have the email address of the corresponding author, right? You can email the corresponding author properly and kindly ask for the full text, saying that you are poor students in need of this article for your research. Is very important. Can you give me a PDF of for the article? Saying a very nice word lah, okay, to back the corresponding author to email the article to you. There are some other not so legal way to get the article as well. I can't tell you here. You can email me on how to get those lah. But those illegal way is not appropriate for me to discuss here. Is there a way to limit journal finder to find only free publishing journals? Some of the journal finder, yes, they can do that, but not all. But some can actually limit the search to open access or only subscription to journal. Okay, they are able to do that. Is there any other questions that I can help to answer in this session? You are free to unmute yourself to ask any questions if you like to. Or you can type in the chat before we hit the 4:30 marks. If no, then I will give that a session to the moderators.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gab, for your sharing. Okay, I think that all the students and also whoever all the audience will be benefits from this session.